Shane, by the time you'd finished, the fifth grade, you'd already had 100 films and commercials under your belt. Do you remember those days?
I remember those days as a youngster working in Hollywood. I got my start I was born in 1971. In the same year, Century 21 became a thing. It was a big real estate company. And a friend of my father's was producing a series of commercials for them. And they said, we're trying to appeal to young families looking to buy homes. We can't find a kid that can sit and behave long enough to get these takes done. And I was literally sitting in the corner chewing on something, and my dad said, why don't you take him? So I started as a baby actor in front of the camera. Those days I don't remember. My first memory of working on set was with June Lockhart, from Lassie, and worked with June on some projects that my father was producing. And then Lloyd Haynes from Room 222, Ron Masak, who I'm still very dear with, Ron's been in everything from Harper Valley PTA, Tora. He was a Velocic Pickle Stork, Murder, She Wrote. And then was on Whitney and the Robot with David Arkin back for NBC before I was 7 years old. So I grew up doing a lot of on-camera work as a youngster. And what was really interesting is my father got a contract with Encyclopedia Britannica to do all their, what they called burns and poisons and general safety films, the educational films of the 70s. Well, I was that kid. I was that kid that was riding his bike across the street without looking both ways and got hit. I was the kid who ran out in the street after his Frisbee or his baseball and got hit. I was got hit by cars in my dad's video. The kid that got electrocuted because he put the paper clip in the socket. And what was weird was this was mandated viewing in all the schools growing up. So we would have these assemblies, and it was kind of weird because you were stuck with 500 kids in this auditorium watching your video, and they'd watch you get electrocuted. I got to drown a couple times. I was the kid who got in the pool and went after something when nobody was looking and drowned. And yeah, that was how I started my career.
Reminds me of Scared Straight. Do you remember that?
I know it well.
I remember. It just kind of reminds me of
I know it well.
That was also mandatory viewing. Yeah,
that's right. It was. So long story longer is my father. He had been a successful actor in the 70s, and fell in love with filmmaking. So he went all out and bought a Moviola flatbed, a couple of RE16 cameras that he had. And at a very young age, I started learning how to splice film, run the Moviola, use an RE16, and be an assistant, whether I was doing the slate or assisting the editors that would come in to sync sound or splice film. And I actually enjoyed that kind of work a lot more than showing up on a set, sitting around for 6 hours to get 20 minutes of work in. Very young. So I retired in front of the camera probably before I was 11 or 12. Those days were behind me.
But then by the time you were 19, you had won 2 Emmys?
Yeah, I was nominated for 4 Emmys before my 19th birthday and won 2.
Okay, blessing or curse?
It sure was a blessing that night. I was the toast of the town. I remember going to the after parties and hitting all those restaurants, being that 16-year-old kid walking around with an Emmy in the restaurant. That was cool. But you go back to school, life goes on, and I was not sure what I wanted to do with my life. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work in the industry, but I wasn't passionate about it. I wanted to be a drummer for a season. I wanted to race dirt bikes for another season. And my interest kind of followed that. And I'd always get back into working in our industry because Dad was doing a project, he needed help. Somebody needs an AC. That guy that worked on our last film needs to hire an assistant cameraman. I want you to go work with him for the day. So I always got pulled back in and didn't try. And I think the curse was, here's somebody who didn't put much thought or effort into what I did and had 4 Emmy noms and 2 wins before I had really been a year out of high school. Before I was old enough to drink, I was that deep. And when I finally decided to pursue this industry, I made a decision to put the Emmys in a closet. I got rid of them out of sight, out of mind for probably 10 years. Started at the bottom. My father had a wonderful assistant, Janet Stone, who used to work at Castle Rock for Allens with Bell and Larry David. And I called her one day and said, I want to get into this industry. I want to start from the ground up. I want to start over and repave the way to where I need to go. And she made a phone call for me, and I had taken a couple interviews and was working at Castle Rock shortly after, and got fired from them after a year. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I learned that, what I thought I knew didn't matter. I learned how to become a good listener. It didn't matter what I had achieved or done before. Fortunately, there wasn't the internet or IMDb, so people didn't look up their PA to see what my history was. So I started from the ground up and worked with Castle Rock for about a year and a half on shows like Seinfeld, Sequest, All American Girl, Roseanne. And then after getting fired, wound up working for Entertainment Tonight for a year and a half until Viacom took over the studio. And then from then went freelance and figured it out. Just started working wherever I could, doing whatever I could.
What did getting fired teach you?
What it really taught me is, you can still put the Emmys in the closet, but you still have a sense of belonging. You still don't feel like the bottom guy in the totem pole, even though I was. I was hired as the office PA at 447 at Universal Studios during taping of a lot of these big sitcoms. So I was a nothing. And I think because of my upbringing and because of what I had experienced, I naturally felt like I had a sense of belonging that may have not been warranted just because of my own history, and that was on me. I knew I was in trouble when they had a very famous director by the name of John Rich come in to direct one of the episodes. John had done the Brady Bunch. He's been around. I think he did Sound of Music. Wasn't John Rich, it was another director. Bobby Wise, forgive me. And I was told nobody's allowed to talk to him. He's a legend. If you're below the line, you don't look at him, you don't talk to him. Well, I walked down the hall to deliver my Smart and Final run, and Bobby Wise is in the cafeteria making himself a sandwich or a bowl of soup. And I said, "Mr. Wise, how you doing?" He looked at me and he goes, "What's up, kid?" And I said, "Wells Roots, my godfather, Lee Stanley's my dad." And he stopped everything, gave me a hug. He goes, "What are you doing here? Let's hang out." And I think because I did what I shouldn't have done, it showed my bosses that I don't listen well. I didn't care what they said. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I only did that because he was a true friend of the family. My godfather and him had done 3 movies together, and I knew who he was. And I got fired over that.
Wow.
So I learned quick, follow directions.
It's interesting, though, we won't go too deep into this, but how sometimes it's not actually that, it's someone's ego was offended. But anyway, that...
I could tell you it was. The showrunner's wife was my boss, and when I got fired, it was pretty interesting. I got brought in by the UPM, who was a wonderful human being who worked for Castle Rock. He said, "Look, you did nothing wrong technically. It's just a weird dynamic, man." He goes, "You're not supposed to talk to a guy, and then you end up knowing this guy." And this guy had been out on my dad's boat 3 times. That's how I knew. Why not say hi to him? But I was told, don't talk to him.
Yeah.
I should have told my boss, "Look, he's an old family friend," and I didn't. But
and those are the unwritten rules of Hollywood that sometimes we learn, unfortunately. Hence your book that we'll go more into.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think if you had been in your 40s and had won those 2 Emmys or been nominated for 4, that it would have been a sweeter victory, or you don't really think about that? It's just been your life.
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, I went through a phase where I assumed up until I was 40 that I had peaked at 16 or 17 or 18. I think that's a dangerous thing. I was very fortunate, very young, to be a part of something that was successful. It wasn't me, it was the team, and I was just a lucky recipient. We had 33 Emmy noms in 5 years. I think we won 13 or 14 Emmys. So I was very fortunate to be a part of that because of my camera work or the other production work that I did on these shows. But, you get to know childhood actors growing up like Macaulay Culkin, or Adam Rich was a friend of mine, or working with Charlie Sheen for many years, and we talk about peaking at a young age. Charlie's great success, obviously he had tremendous success through many years, capping it with 2.5 Men and Anger Management. But you think about Platoon and Wall Street, how that all happened before he was 22 years old. You talk to Adam Rich about the success he had as a youngster, Gary Coleman, and I always felt I could connect with those guys because of that. I understood what it was like to be very lucky, to be very fortunate, to be a part of something. And never took it for granted. I never used it I don't think, to my advantage. But I couldn't help but think as I was going through my 20s and 30s, as I was trying to find my way and create and write and produce or direct or edit films, I got to get this kind of success. I got to achieve this. And though I had success through those years, it wasn't until I was about 40 or 41, maybe it's that midlife crisis they all tell us that you get at 40, that I realized that I was chasing something that I was never achieve again. It didn't mean I'd never win an Emmy again, but I was never going to win another one at 16. I was 40. And, so you see people go through it every year. Hundreds of people win a statue. That could be me again. It might not be. But I think the excitement of it was the fact that I was so young. And that's what made it special. And you can't go backwards. You can't go back in time.